Hi guys, Mr. Jaeger here, and welcome back to IAE 2954, and welcome to the longest named day, because there's multiple ship manufacturers in. We've got Greycat Industrial, ARGO Astronautics, we got Kruger Intergalactic, and Consolidated Outland. There we go. So all four of those are today inside our pods, though luckily for us, they only take up a couple of sections, so this should be a pretty smooth but very important video. Because don't forget, these things, I'm going to just say right now, this could be the last IAE that these things are not just here because of cargo, but instead could be more productive and utilized in base construction, in feature gameplay loops, all of those things which now fully can be realized in a really cool and awesome way. So, going on into the first few ships, we're going to look at a bit of the older gems, but a new spin. One of these things is the MPUV, or Multi-Person Utility Vehicle. So this is the tractor variant, which obviously is the tractor beam variant. This has a size 2 tractor beam on the top with a size 1 tractor beam on the bottom, and you can also mount a bit of cargo there, which is pretty cool. The next thing you can do is you can get yourself a cargo, which is basically it's like a cargo pod inside these particular things, and what they do is you put a couple of boxes cargo in, and you then be able to get yourself transporting your cargo around the station or space station, or however you want to put it. Then finally, you've got the personnel. Now the personnel is kind of a nice little, it's a very basic bitch taxi service or a bus service, depending on how you want to view it. But what this does is it gets people to take a seat inside these things, and they patiently wait until you accidentally hit the release lever or whatever the hell this thing is, and watch as it goes down into the ground and explodes and people die. No, in reality what happens is you use this thing to basically pop over, you basically transport people from A to B. As this particular machine does not have a quantum drive. This is a very simplistic little vehicle with VTOL thrusters and the ability to fly limited amounts of cargo around. These things are designed more as get shit off your shit and get stuff over to the other side sort of deal. Simple but effective stuff, you know, usual kind of thing. Following on from the MPUV series, I forgot to mention also that this is So, in addition to having cargo hauling vehicles that allow you to transport either people, boxes, or crew from one side to the other, we now make our way towards the newer toys in the group, which are now not only the new kids on the block, but also a sign of a potentially glorious and noble future. We'll get to you in a second. So I want to introduce the first ever ground vehicle for ARGO Astronautics, the CSV, or Combat, or Cargo Supply Vehicle. I think that's how it goes. Cargo Service Vehicle, there we go. So, Cargo Service Vehicle, not Combat Supply Vehicle. Yeah, so Combat, gosh, I want to say Combat, my brain's just like, it's Combat! No, it's Cargo Supply Vehicle. It is basically it's a pickup truck. I'm not even going to try and begin to pronounce anything else. It's a pickup truck, but it's a pickup truck that also, in the future, I hope, has the ability to drag shit with it as well. Because it looks like you can attach something to this, and you'll be able to get more of vehicles going into it, which I do hope is the case. But the cool thing about this ground Vic is you have the ability to store your... There's a nice little semi-useless feature, but it's pretty nice. The ability to pop your multi-tool into this, which is pretty cool. And if we go into the driver's seat, we get actually a pretty decent view. I mean, as things go, it's another ground vehicle, so it doesn't really have a huge amount of uses at this moment. But as mentioned before, this could be the last IAE that has ground vehicles or other vehicles of its kind that don't really have a huge amount of use at this point. these things are potentially going to be seeing a lot more activity over the course of next year with the introduction of Pyro, 4.0, and a few other things as alongside. Also to note is the other used new toy on the block, which is already starting to see some significant usage as well as being a notable first. This is the first ever mech suit done by ARGO Astronautics. Yes. This is the Atlas, or to quote the actual thing, the Assisted Transport and Loading System. So this is basically a mech suit, which if you've ever seen Alien, you get the reference. And how the vehicle works, though, is it has a tractor beam on its right hand, and I either assume a counterweight or some kind of grip thing, judging from the textures underneath. But the general vibe is that the Atlas is a one-manned... it's a mech suit with a tractor beam that makes moving shit a lot easier. So you pick up the box, you can pick up to 32 SEUs worth of cargo, and it is a lot easier to maneuver than, say, if you were using the gravity gun for a change. You can still move shit with said gravity gun, but you're ideally wanting to use the Atlas, considering it's also a much better frame to work with the heavier shit. And also, it's not super quick. Like, you running around like that, running around with your gravity gun is a bit of a pain in the ass. Is a little bit quicker, so the Atlas can be a bit of a pain in the ass. But if you want to attach any particular vehicle, if you have a dedicated cargo vessel and you want to attach a means to get your cargo off the ship as soon as possible, I would recommend having an Atlas on board, just because it's that useful. We're hoping to see some improvements coming into these things that allow it to be like... to be fair, one of the only complaints I'd have about this thing is that we can't seem to get one in the reclaimer, because the elevator is either just a bit too big or it's too big for the elevator, whichever of the two it may be the more likely. And we tried to sort of knock it over and try and move it around and stuff, but it looks like you need to spawn 2 Atlases to get one on another thing, which kind of sucks, because an Atlas on the reclaimer would be a fucking godsend, I'm not gonna lie. But still, the Atlas has already made quite the introduction, and it's also free as all hell. People bitched and moaned about how it was costing a fair amount of money, but it's like, it's going to be available in-game. It was just an LTI token. Don't calm thy tits. It's just Jesus. Oh boy, we're not doing ourselves any favours with the reputation. But still, very important vehicles. First moments in both ARGO for its first ground vehicle, and first in Star Citizen's history for having the first ever mech suit in-game. As we make our way towards the centre of the room, we are presented with the main workhorse of the ARGO Astronautics fleet. We have 3 very lovely vessels. The SRV, which is a dedicated tractor beam vessel with its own little assortment of cargo, which is nice. We have the ARGO Raft, which is a... You see, I like the ARGO Raft, but I feel at times the ARGO Raft is also now more limited than it was before. But the ARGO Raft is the ARGO Raft being a dedicated cargo hauler, but not in the way that benefits the cargo hauling completely. But we'll get to that in a second. And finally, the oldest of the 3, but the most famous in terms of mining, this is the ARGO Mole. So we'll get started on the ARGO Mole, as she's the oldest, and then we'll go to the second oldest, the Raft, and then finally the newest, which is the SRV. So the ARGO Mole is a multi-operate, or to use its full term, multi-operator laser extractor. The ARGO Mole is a dedicated mining vessel with a unique complement to it. It has the ability to use 3 of these little pod things to basically extend out into into a mining area and mine larger rocks. It's currently the only vessel... I'm going to try and say... Oh, there it is, yeah. It is currently the largest mining vessel available in terms of mining lasers in the game. You'll be hard pressed to... Yeah, you'll be struggling a bit to find... Even with its size 2 mining lasers, you are being put into a position where you need a dedicated crew of about 2 or 3 at least to be able to maximize the full potential of your mining lasers. And you may also even have to get certain other things. So Roll on the Arastra is all I'm going to say. It's definitely a case for that one. But no. So what we'll do is we'll go into the central core area here, but this is one of the side pods that you can utilize as well. Technically speaking, this is in the vacuum, so you would normally get your suit sorted and ready to go before entering into these particular machines. But we go over to here. So this was the first of the ARGO's vessels to be introduced to the verse, and as you can see, it's a very much utilitarian. There's not a huge amount of features and functionality. The design is actually looking a bit old now. If we're going to be serious, it has beds for 4, obviously pilot plus the 3 crew members. We have the that's nice. We have this little door, but for some reason it's not opening at the moment, which is a bit of a shame, but that's just the bathroom with the bathroom living utensils. And as we make our way towards the bow section of the ship, I can imagine this is going to be the engineering side of things fairly soon. But there's the main there's the main underdrill, but we'll have a quick look at the bridge. I do like the bridge. The bridge is nice. The bridge actually looks really, really cool. And it gives you a pretty decent view as well. Like, when looking around, you actually get a very decent view considering what you as the pilot's going to be utilizing. The nice thing also is you've got a really useful MFD here, which sounds a bit weird, but when maneuvering this thing into a decent position to get mining vessels or to get your mining lasers set up and ready to go, there's actually a you can use you can use this thing here to basically pinpoint where the right distance between you and other mining lasers, giving you the best yield for that, which I think is actually pretty damn nice. So so basically, whenever you're using this thing in space, use the MFD as the / radar as a kind of guidance point onto it, because then it allows you to be able to be more accurate or to have the right kind of distance to cover. Because using this thing can be a bit of a pain, especially if you're, it's very much a pain if you're trying to be solo. But if you're going to do this with a crew, you're going to need high levels of communication. The other thing that makes this a bit of a pain, and I think this is more to do with, this is more to do with the version you've got. I don't think you have this in the normal version because can't really see it at all. But this, you can get some smogged up views or whatever. But to go back into what I was talking about with the original intention, how this thing works is you get 3 pods, which obviously I can't really maneuver around at the moment unless I can be a bit cheeky and find the power button. Oh, I saw something. Okay. Well, basically what happens is you use the mining lasers on these devices to basically zap the rocks, melt them, fracture them down, and then gather up the materials. This thing has up to 96 SCUs worth of cargo, which are all transported in these pods, which are now detachable and purchasable. So you have access to both, you have access to this and 2 more mining lasers as well, which allow for quite a large portion. Go. Which allow for either you to have different mining lasers to get a different kind of yield, or some mining lasers are more intensive while other mining lasers are less intensive, or you want to go for something of like the same mining laser across the board to get the maximum amount of yield out, depending on your particular preference. It's completely up to you for that one, but still. As we make our way across the field, we are presented with the Raft, which is the second in the series. The Raft, following in the same footsteps / same chassis as the Mole, is a dedicated cargo transportation. But this vehicle is slightly different because this vehicle doesn't have a cargo bay and is not like the Hull series-ish, kind of. Instead, this thing is designed to not only work as a means of transporting cargo, but then as you arrive on scene, if you're wanting to, for example, be in an outpost that needs supplies, and you don't really have the facilities to make the supplies, but you do need some resources, this thing is apparently designed to have a working crane. Well, it's not apparently. It is designed to have a working crane that allows you to plonk the boxes you've got down, whilst also being able to transport them as well. At the moment, it's permanently in a state of cargo hauling, and you need to put some boxes in. Either you can transport up to 96 SCUs worth of cargo, so that's 332 SCU boxes, which is fine and all, but really, you kind of like, this thing is probably one of the more, I want to say not controversial, I want to say one of the more awkward vehicles to utilize at the moment, because while 96 SCUs worth of cargo is really nice, I also find that this method of loading it on a box and stuff, you have to load it either in a certain box or it's a little bit more awkward. But I look forward to seeing what would be kind of nice as a personal, as a sort of an option for success or suggestion, is they need to make it so that you can switch between these things and or you turn them into like a sort of a you put a sort of temporary rack on, so you're carrying the boxes on this gravitational rack, but instead of having to just settle for limited amounts of stuff or very limited size of boxes, you actually can get more boxes that suit your needs for that one. So there you go. Oh, there it is. I always keep forgetting about this. To be fair, I haven't used a raft in a while. I did own a raft for a while, and I did use it for hauling stuff whilst it was still, before they did any sort of cargo hauling missions for it. Oh, well, I don't know. The demon that watches me as I buy stuff. Ah, yes, the top floor. Well, I can access the bottom floor, so it's all good. So, okay, so if the components feature located here, which, to be fair, is in terms of its design philosophy, is actually pretty modern when you look into it. But yes, so the second floor is for the co-pilot / other team member. Looks very nice. Seriously, I do love the interiors for these things. It very much feels the right kind. And these things have received a bit more of a modernish sort of touch. You can tell already the design mechanics of this ship is after MSR, so it's a lot more modern. And also, it's, to a degree, it's 324 ready. Definitely feels 324 ready, because we've got lots of components, so it definitely has a good few things. And apparently I can buy the other stuff. So yeah, there are... Oh god, your jacket's horrible. Anyway, so the other crew member would be inside this little device, and you would use the crane to move and pick up stuff and do any sort of thing. It would be able to let you move and pick up the stuff from the crane. Random guy just pushing me out of the way. Isn't it wonderful when they do that? And this is why I wish it was just an armistice zone. But yeah, so as you can see by the rather rude individual over there, basically you go into the vehicles, into the mechanical thing, and you go into the crane element, and just shove it out of the way, making myself just a little bit of a pain in the ass for him. But yeah, so basically you have a look at the cranes, it moves the items and cargo through, and then you plonk it down, and you handle it like another thing. So you could potentially solo this, but it is an option for you to be able to look into the... it does give you an option to solo, or if you have a co-pilot with you, you've got a friend of yours alongside, doesn't mind using the cranes, that's another option for you here. A little bit of a ladder access as well. And I will say, this is where we start seeing the more cool... There we go. So we get access to the suit rooms. For some reason, there's 2 suit rooms, but there's 1H, 2H, and then there's 1 and 2. So 1 would assume heavy suits, light suits, or whatever. And then, if we go into here, we're presented with the living accommodations as well, with a TV, which, I'll be honest with you, I actually didn't notice until now. GG. We have a nice view of the rear of the ship, so if you wanted to sort of get a good view, some nice living accommodations alongside here, alongside also a very lovely looking bed, which also acts as an escape pod. So they've got some pretty good visuals there. Finally, we have access to the main lobby before heading over to the bridge. The bridge pretty much has the same style of bridge as the mole, So there isn't really any major news on that one. And let me just pop out of this thing. And let me just be a dick. Oh, hang on. Let me just see if I can try and... I should have probably done this. Can we close this? Damn it. Oh, I'm sure he'll be able to get it out. But yeah. So you can go out via the airlock. Oh, there he goes. Oh, you got the whiff to work. That's good. But yeah, so basically... You can come out via the airlock, which is kind of the way I tend to do it because it saves time. And you can also go in via the airlock as well. So it means that if you don't want to, if you're in a position where you can't really use the lift, you can use that instead, which is pretty nice. Finally, we are presented with the latest in the line, the SRV, or Standard Recovery Vehicle, a tow or tugboat, if you will. The tugboat is what I'm just going to call this now. So the tugboat is a dedicated... I'm going to say, I'm curious. Can you actually close that? Oh, it's an entire thing. Right, okay. So the tugboat is the latest in the design philosophy of ARGO Astronautics. Again, using a similar chassis to the Raft and the ARGO Mole. But this time, it's probably more dedicated for you as an individual. Ah, okay, so we've got some modernizations in tow. I can see that, yeah. So this vessel has only the one bed, has a decent chair, and some nice sort of living utensils. Nothing too fancy, but it has the latest in ARGO Astronautics design thing. It's actually kind of cool when you see everything like that. And the main purpose of this ship is simply to tug stuff. You are utilizing the largest tractor beam in the game, which is pretty scary when you look at it. I mean, if I look at this thing, it's got a utility, doesn't really say. Oh yeah, Safe Tow size 3 tractor beam system. That is bloody massive. And this thing has the ability to tractor beam capital ships almost. You can utilize it on the Hercules, on the 890 Jump. You can use these. To be fair, we've yet to see someone try and use it on the Polaris, but give it time. I'm sure someone will do it. But basically, these things are designed to ensure that if you're stuck in the field and you need to get out, you can. Or if you see an opportunity to swipe some ships and do some salvage on them, you can. It's a pretty impressive vehicle, and I think it has a lot of potential to be awesome. I definitely do need to grab one at some point, just because I'm very much feeling... Okay, so I close that one. I'm trying to remember how to use this thing. Ah, yes. So I think if we then take this... Yep, there we go. It takes the elevator down. Cool. I definitely do need to get one at some point, just because when it comes to moving stuff and getting salvage, these things are indispensable when it comes to gathering up materials. It carries up to... doesn't really say. Does oh yeah, 12 SCUs worth of cargo, which is cool. I do like it. It's a pretty cool vehicle, and I think we definitely need... We definitely need it, and I feel like I definitely need it. This is probably one of the main vehicles I probably will try and grab with IRL cash, just because not having it in the early days is going to be a bit of a bitch, especially if you're wanting to move like large amounts of cargo or ships. You're going to need at least one of these things, and I think the SRV may be a good shout, because if we have to deal with like base attacks or whatever, you've got the ship to move the wrecks around, and then you can salvage them to your heart's content. As we enter into the second room of the event, we are presented with Consolidated Outland, the next company that has taken a rather interesting swing of things. They first of all came into the verse with a surprising deal with the Xi'an, and have produced some rather unique specimens of fighters / personal vehicles or daily flyers, whichever you want to call it. The first of which we're going to look at as the Mustang Alpha. Now, I did go into quite a lot of depth in Invictus Launch Week with these things, so to save on time and also to kind of give Invictus Launch Week 29 55 ago, we're gonna kind of keep this thing simple. So this is the Mustang series is basically a series of fighters that have varying degrees of usability. The Mustang Alpha is the Alpha Starter Edition, and is the other option when it comes to the cheapest vessel for you to fly in. In terms of visuals, it's a pretty decent kind of array. Let me just pop in the side just to showcase this one. So in terms of visuals, it's not bad. In fact, it's almost, to be fair, it's actually really good. Your MFDs and everything else are limited, sure, but in terms of visuals for combat, there's very seldom I could say against it. It's very, very good. The big disadvantage for me and with this thing though is the view may be nice, but the rest of the ship is a bit, well, it's, first of all, the ship is ugly as all hell. You've got your weird looking gimbal style turret system, which in terms of weapons, you have access to 2 Badger repeaters, so it's not even that impressive. You do have some missile, I think you can get some wing mounts potentially, but I think it's primarily just the front weapons on the top there. Yeah, actually, no, yep, you can't even get, yeah, so there's not even the sides thing, so yes, it is pretty much the weapons on the front there. So you're not really given a huge amount of options when it comes to doing stuff, and this also being the cargo, well, this thing finally having been implemented does now give you the ability to provide some cargo for you to sort of interact with, which is kind of good slash okay-ish at the point. But no, this thing is... I'll be honest with you, I'm not a fan of the Mustang series. Never really have been. The only Mustang that I possibly would say is any good, or at least if you are wanting to, you know, if you had a gun to my head and said you have 5 seconds to choose a Mustang for you to fly and to daily or whatever, what is it? Then I would probably say the Mustang Beta, primarily because it actually does have living accommodation, which we will show you in this case, because there's actually other things as well. Though, oddly enough, when you pop into this particular thing, you have to kind of get off in a weirdish way. Like, you can't just sort of... I think you can... Does it let you come off... Okay, so this thing allows you to get off in that respect. Is there not an ability for you to get up in on the side of it? Maybe if I get on this left-hand side... Like, basically, for years, I thought you didn't have the ability to live in this thing. When in actuality, you can, in fact, get in, and you could open up the side. But for some reason, I can't seem to find a button press for it. Unless there's a button that allows me to withdraw to the side. But you may recall, I was actually able to find a living accommodations behind me and be able to get myself sorted. So, yeah, no, this is really kind of hilarious in terms of visuals. But I think at the moment it's not working. And I think since we've got the... What is it? The... well, the showroom edition isn't going to give me anything for it, but that is the only edition of the Mustang that I personally would say I like, because other than that, there's not really anything else. I mean, you've got your racing variant as well, which it's the most in terms of its speed. I think the Gamma is the one that gives the most sleekest performance, but again, it's designed primarily as a racing vessel, not a fighting vessel. The Mustang series it's just disappointing, I'll be brutally honest with you. I just don't find them at all as an appealing ship, which is ironic considering the next vehicle that they're going to, I actually would say used to challenge the Penguin for the best starter ship in the game. Ah, the Nomad. This little gem. It's been a while since I've taken in the flight with her, but she is one of the more unique vessels of Consolidated Outland, and one could say kind of the flagship. Like, when I think of Consolidated Outland, apart from a certain other vessel, which we'll get to as we get to the holodeck, this thing tends to be the thing I think of the most. Now, I know the Mustangs are, finger quote, more famous, but that's not always... I wouldn't say that's a good thing in their realm. I'd say that, really, if you're thinking Consolidated Outland, a good ship, is the first thing you want to think of, and the Nomad is definitely that. And as mentioned before, it was a vessel that would challenge in my opinion, challenge the title of best starter ship in the game, because it would try to sort of fight its way about being the sort of the pride and give you, the player who was new to Star Citizen an opportunity to expand in a different direction while still retaining some of its more useful features. Now, as time has gone by and the Penguin has become more and more of a first upgrade choice with all of the varieties of different vehicles and stuff, this vessel, I feel, is also entering into the same realm, but it's still incredibly usable, especially for its price tag because of a couple of things. First of all, it's a big bulky vessel with a very decent amount of firepower, as even though it's like slightly less than the Penguin, it certainly has its own bark for its bite. It has access to a size 3 Panther repeater weapon on the front, which is pretty nice. It also has access to a number of missiles, actually, quite a lot. 8 size 2 Strike Force 2 missiles, so pretty nice on that one. We also have a tractor beam on the back of the vessel as well, because the main draw of this vessel is its cargo bay, or pickup truck is probably the more correct element towards it. This is what the nickname for this particular vehicle was, what people would envision as. So you get the access to a tractor beam size 1, and it basically allows you to get yourself up to 24 SCU's worth of cargo inside. Or, if you're careful enough, you can actually put a ROC on the back of this thing as well, which, yes, you have to jerry-rig it. By God, you have to jerry-rig it, but it is doable. And if we head over to here, and we head to this little doohickey on the side, we'll be able to get access to the ship. So this particular thing this ship also represents a pretty significant, well, it's more visually representative of what Consolidated Outland is and their abilities, as well as the law side of things for them, because they actually are one of the few companies in the UEE that have been able to somehow make a trade agreement. Oh, GG, there's the toilet. With the Xi'an, giving themselves the ability to make some pretty impressive vessels, which, when you look into it, this is really impressively designed. You've got a nice interior, you've got some marble-esque sort of things. It's not quite Origin Jumpworks, but it certainly has its own flair and sense of luxury, which I do like. And if we pop over into the cockpit, and we pop in, you'll, for those who've played sci-fi games, you may notice a little trickle of familiarity with this thing. I don't want to say anything specific, but you get the vibe, right? Oh, jeez. Oh, I should have stayed in the thing. Whoops, my bad. Let's pop back in there. So no, aside of the little jokes and everything else, one of the things I like about the Nomad is it does have a pretty decent visual. It's one of the few ships that not only allows you to have some good visuals up top. Yes, there's a few struts here and there, but it's not too bad. But it's one of the few ships that you can actually look down below when you're landing, which is really cool. Downsides of this vessel is that, unfortunately, you haven't got your cargo as integrally sealed, which is a bit of a shame. And the other thing is that, unfortunately, these landing pad skimmer technology things, they're really cool in terms of aesthetics, and to a certain extent, they probably will be useful for certain environments. But then there comes the real-life problem of the fact that when you've got skimmer technology on a surface, you don't really have any grip on those things. Second, in the more practical gameplay sense, the skimmer pads are a little bit cumbersome and a little bit clumsy to land on. So unless you do your landings quite a lot with the Nomad, it's very much a case of hit and miss, whether or not you smack into the ground a little hard or not. But regardless on that, I would say for the price that this vehicle was going into, it's yeah, I would say it's a very, very good price. I mean, this thing, as mentioned before, used to be a challenger for the best starter ship in the game. Now I feel that that role has become more of a very good option to upgrade to, considering now there are so many other vessels that are in the starter category. But I think even after being removed as a sort of starting option, you still have the ability to enjoy yourself with this thing, as well as make a lot of money potentially in the early stages of the game with all the cargo hauling it can do. So, we're in the basement floor, and we finally have the last two vessel groups to deal with. The first is only available in these two ship forms, which I honestly hope changes, because I do want to see more of that coming out of it, especially since it has this logo. Kruger Intergalactic. You can't give us this bloody amazing looking logo and only give us this level of stuff, CIG. Come on. Give us a bigger ship. I want a bigger ship. Anyway, these two are the Kruger Intergalactic, P-52 and P-72 Archimedes. So, P-52 Merlin, Archimedes. So the P-52 Merlin is a dedicated snub fighter that is usually attached to the back of a Constellation series, either the Aquila, Andromeda. Those are the only two versions that you'll be getting off that particular thing. There are no other vessels that this ship, or that this snub fighter is attached to, but this thing has a pretty impressive firepower load, and also it's not a bad little vessel. I've seen them more in racing than combat, but I'm trying to remember any time I've actually seen these in combat. I don't think I have, but if I have done, or if you do use one, these things are very nimble. They're very tiny, as you can see, and while they don't have any quantum drives on them, they could certainly give you a good run for your money if you're not careful. This particular one has a couple of size 1 guns on the top, on the wings, but in the middle here, which is very difficult to see unless you jump, you can actually see, there you go, and then a unique thing called the Tiger Strike. That's what it's called. Size 2 Gatling gun. Now, this particular ship does have a slight disadvantage in the sense that you can't really customize the Tiger Strike, and that its ammunition capacity is okay, being at 1,200 rounds, but not something you can sustain in a massive firefight. Whereas the Archimedes doesn't have any laser or gun repeaters, but instead a giant, well, basically inlet valve. But instead you get 4 size 1s, which gives you a little bit more flexibility towards what kind of firepower you're wanting to utilize on your opponent. And obviously it's designed, as you can see from its luxurious stats, as the vessel that you get with the Constellation Phoenix. So it's designed for more luxurious levels, but I also, ironically, makes it more suitable for combat levels as well. Overall, I would say Kruger Intergalactic is a vessel series, or is a ship manufacturer that we need to see vastly more amounts of vessels from, because I feel like that ship's manufactorum levels definitely need to... It's a really cool logo, and I would love to see what kind of other designs are available, because you know, what bigger designs will they be? That's the thing I want to see. But anyway, we now move to one of the more core elements of industrialization, the Greycat Industries. And let me just take a moment just to pay my respects to the oldest ground vehicle in Star Citizen's history, the Greycat PTV, the official unit of measurement inside any Star Citizen ship's cargo hold, as well as one of the easiest vessel or ground vehicles to muck around in, drive in, do whatever. You can actually drive these for free over in Horizon, where they've not only got them scattered around in some of the maps and everything, but you can also find yourself being able to drive them in the race course that's located over there too. It's a really, really cool vehicle. And it's a really nice little nimble vehicle, and I've used this thing many times over many years, so I've got a fair amount of history with this thing, and I'm sure I'm going to make a lot more with it at some point very soon. And this vehicle is the STV, which is not a good name, I'll be honest with you. And it's basically just a beach buggy. It was introduced I want to say a year or two ago, but it's not really had huge levels of impact. It's just a slightly bigger version of the PTV. And it's got 2 seats, and it's got a beach buggy vibe. It looks cool, though. I won't lie about that. It definitely looks cool. Greycat can make a really nice looking ground Vic. But the main reason why you want to talk about Greycat is this thing, the ROC, or, to give it its full name, Remote Ore Collector. So the ROC is the first dedicated ground mining vessel with a size 1 mining laser, I want to say 1.5 mining laser, which allows players to mine handhelds either en masse or in areas where the handheld is slightly more awkward to do so, which can happen. It does have its moments. So the main benefit is that this thing can fire a mining laser at a pretty reasonable range, and for the pilot to get inside, to get out of the vehicle and do his own thing, which is fair enough. I did actually attempt to try and do a bit of a measurement contest between this vehicle and its counterpart, but I'll get into that in a second. But the vehicle itself is pretty useful. You have up to 0.8 SCUs worth of cargo in the back, which you can collect from here, and you can basically put it into your backpack, or you can take this thing onto your ship, which then you can fly over to the nearest point to sell. But the vehicle itself is pretty decent. It does have its limiting factors, though. It only has 4 wheels, which can at times make it top-heavy, and I definitely had a bit of an awkward issue when it came to getting into various ships. One vessel in particular that they would sort of pair up, if you will, is the Cutlass Black with this thing. Now, one thing I'm going to just warn people about: don't get out of the ship, don't get out of this thing if the mining laser hasn't been retracted into its standby position. Because if you don't turn the mining option off, the bloody mining laser shoots up 90 degrees, so it literally just goes poink, and it basically fucks with your ROC, and it fucks with your Cutlass Black. It's a pain in the ass, and it basically ruins your vehicle for a while, so be careful when doing it like that. Just saying. But yes, overall this vehicle is okay. The other disadvantage of this vehicle is that, unfortunately, it's not very sealed in. Those are not windows. That is just crash webbing, which means if you're on a planet which has a really cold wind or really warm temperature, you're going to be struggling to survive in that thing for much longer, and obviously you're not going to have the ability to use this thing in a planet without an atmosphere. So overall this thing is useful, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass to manage, and if you find yourself needing to get a bit more out of something, or if you're finding yourself needing to get, if you're finding yourself wanting to be on a semi-hostile planet, this thing is a bit of a bitch to work with. It's useful, by God it's useful, but it's still limiting in that respect, which is why I feel like this vehicle here, the ROCDS, or Remote Ore Collector Dual Seat, gets a bit too much flack for what it's worth. So this thing has the same mining laser, but instead of having a open-topped or open canopy, you instead have the sealed canopy for the main driver. Now this thing came out, and people were like, wasn't like a backlash, as it were, but there were a fair amount of people who kind of felt like the ROCDS was kind of a rip-off, and that players who were operating with 2 people, because apparently that was what this thing was originally designed for, finger quote, it was meant for between 1 to 2 people. But the thing is, really, it's meant for 1. Like, sure, the official stats say it's for 2 people, but I don't think that makes any logical sense when it makes far more sense for you to just hop out of the vehicle yourself, hop into the chair once you found yourself a decent spot, and start mining. Because, I'll be honest with you, if I'm a miner, I don't really want to go mining with someone else unless it's on a group project, like on the Mole. If I'm using a vehicle like this, I'm going to be doing it solo. The biggest disadvantage I can honestly say that this vehicle has is that you are requiring to have a larger vehicle, such as a Valkyrie or an MSR or I don't know if you can fit this in the Corsair. I'll be brutally honest with you, I have yet to try that, but it is possible. But basically, you just need to find a ground vehicle that a vehicle that you have in your hangar that'll be able to take this ground Vic. As you can see, it's got 6 wheels instead of the 4, which means you have a lot more stability on the ground. It can it has a much better grip. It works for, it has a much longer has a longer range with its mining laser. Overall, it's an improvement over the ROC, which I would say, if you are going to go onto the ground, get this thing. Just don't worry. Don't bother with the ROCDS. Don't bother with the ROCDS. Fucking hell, you can tell I'm tired. Don't bother with the bog standard ROC. Get the DS and focus on that instead of that to get the most out of it. Now, I did attempt to try and do like a period where I tried to sell stuff with the ROC versus the ROCDS, and I never got around to getting the ROCDS for a spin, so I will probably need to redo this. But on the limited amount of times I did get the ROC out, I found that the mining laser problem had yet to be resolved, and trying to park it in the back of a fucking Cutlass Black is an absolute pain in the arse. Oh. As we make our way towards the holodeck, I think there's only one available today, and the vehicle in question is one that is a penultimate one. There it is. The Pioneer. Oh boy. So, yes, the Pioneer, the vehicle that I am going for at the moment. Whether or not I get it is another matter entirely. I hope I can get it, because it would be absolutely brilliant if I could. But, at the same time, it's definitely going to be a lot harder to do this year than, say, the previous year, when I should have bought it. But I, being a pleb at the time, didn't really understand the significance of what this vehicle would be. So the Pioneer, for those who don't know, is a capital-style ship, almost. Well, it's more or less a capital ship. I'm going to consider it a capital ship. Basically, it's a dedicated base construction crafting megapolis. It has the ability to build the largest of the buildings. It also has the ability for you to construct vehicles to a certain extent. It has the ability for you to do a whole host of things and also take resources from the ground. It is a fully functioning outpost. And it's kind of scary what it can do and how awesome it is. And obviously, what makes things worse is during CitizenCon, they kept hyping this bloody thing up beyond belief. So that now means that basically what that now means is that God Emperor help me as I try and get this particular thing. Oh boy, yeah, no, it's bloody massive. And it's a fantastic piece of kit, which I am... Yeah, no, I need this. It's one of those ships that when base building becomes a thing, this is going to be absolutely crucial. Like, this is one of those ships that when the Star Citizen 1.0 launches and we have everything, the green light goes off and the starter gun fires, whoever has this ship is going to be in a major position of advantage, because they're going to be able to land on their claim, they're going to be able to plop down their first few buildings, and they're going to have a major advantage in setting up the right kind of thing for it. It is going to be absolutely mental when this thing comes out, and I am very much keen on getting it. Very much keen on getting it. So, yeah. If I can get it, oh boy, I'll be done. This'll be, yeah, no. I'll be in the green. But Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, it'll be a long time in recovery mode for me, but still. Yeah, this thing is really awesome though. I do very much look forward to it. I mean, in terms of its features, there's a huge amount. There's a massive habitation bay. The cargo capacity is up to 1,000 SCU. It's got a dedicated landing pad, which, as said, goes into its own little area, which you can then use to either repair. We can use to repair the ships and fix things up. It has a pretty awesome bridge level as well. It also can these particular VTOL engines, when you land onto the ground, can then become drills which get resources, or has a refining system, so it allows people to be able to gather resources and make them into more advanced materials. It has a massive cross section for engineering points. It as a vessel goes, it is completely self-sufficient in terms of what it can do for the user as well as what it can do for everyone else, which is pretty awesome. Oh boy, I'm really hoping I can get this thing. It's on a time limited sale and they've just increased the price for it, so I hope I can get it. I really hope I can get it. Oh, please let me get this thing. Please, God Emperor, let me get this thing. But if I don't get it, I don't get it. But it's one of those things that, I've not really had many large ships, and I'm now finally in a position where I kind of know what I want to do in Star Citizen, and now that I typical fucking sod's law timing, that's when CIG decides to say, the thing that Jaeger wants, let's hype it up to the ultimate degree. No, it's not like that at all. It's just my shit quality of timing meant that I didn't get it when it was good, and now it's going to be a lot tougher. But, let's make it a challenge. I like a challenge. But anyway, more importantly, that's about it for today. Thank you all so very much for watching this series and watching these episodes. I do very much appreciate that. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Like, I know these probably aren't going to give me the largest amount of views, and people are just going to watch me do this as they go by, but I really do love this game. And even on the days where it's a bit rough, the patches are a bit terrible, and I'm just lacking in energy, I still am doing my utmost to get these episodes out to you guys, because I do love this game, and I very much want to see this thing succeed as much as possible. So tomorrow is going to be quite the significant day, as tomorrow is Drake Day. And while I'm sure there are a certain amount of people who are going to be in love with certain other ships coming out for it, Drake Day is going to be one for... Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out with Drake Interplanetary. I don't know if there's any new ships due to come out with Drake Interplanetary, but at least we've got a decent ship manufacturer before them. I'll see you guys next time. This is Mr. Jaeger, signing out.